Hey all, Alex from Music Hub here, and today we'll be doing a review of the 1988 book by John Ehle, Trail of Tears, The Rise and Fall of the Cherokee Nation. John Marsden Ehle Jr., born the 13th of December 1925 in Asheville, North Carolina, died the 24th of March 2018 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The husband of Oscar-nominated actress Rosemary Harris and the father of actress Jennifer Ehle, John Ehle also had a background in theater, but it was literature that he would make his main focus throughout his life. He wrote 11 novels overall, perhaps the most famous being 1964's The Landbreakers, which linked Ehle with a reputation for writing historical novels that were set in Appalachian America. Ehle was also a vocal civil rights activist, and his social actions would carry into his more limited nonfiction work as well. Even among those, though, Trail of Tears is unique for being an attempt at a comprehensive history rather than a sort of journalistic report. And yes, despite the attention-grabbing title, this book is not strictly about the Trail of Tears, but rather the Cherokee Nation as a whole, starting with the birth of future Chief Major Ridge in the 1770s and continuing through the 1840s. The Trail of Tears sort of acts as the book's tragic climax, and that's a useful anchor point for the plot. Throughout, the reader knows what all of these other events will eventually lead up to, so it allows us to analyze them more critically. Ehle nicely sets up the various political tensions in the U.S. government and amidst the Cherokees themselves, the different factions you start seeing grow between Major Ridge and the other major Cherokee chief, John Ross. And how this discontent affected the eventual treaty negotiations is really tragic, actually, because when the negotiations predictably don't end favorably for the Cherokees, the two different factions are at each other's throats, and the end result is, quite literally, murder. One thing I'll point out is that Ehle has no love for Andrew Jackson, making major efforts to point out his sliminess and his duplicity when dealing with the Cherokee and other First Nations. That said, he also makes the point towards the end of the book that the U.S. government didn't exactly have a good option in this scenario, because the westward expansion would have continued regardless, and it was already proven that white people and Native Americans couldn't coexist peacefully on a larger scale in spite of their best efforts, again, at that time. It's not an excuse for Jackson or a dismissal of the situation's inhumanity. Rather, it's an acknowledgement that white settlers had made this sort of a no-win situation for the Cherokees, and there wasn't going to be an outcome that resulted in the Cherokee Nation keeping their land and surviving in any healthy way. It's bleak as hell. Ehle's writing is a mixed bag, I think, which isn't surprising given that he is, once again, a novelist entering the world of nonfiction. On the bright side, he is superb at bringing out his character's humanity, and when painting a tragedy of this caliber, this is a potent skill to have. The problem that I have, and it's a pretty major one, is that Ehle will play with the narrator's identity. There are multiple times where midway through a paragraph, the perspective will change from third person, which is normal for nonfiction works that aren't autobiographies, to first person, as if the story is being told by someone who is experiencing it actively. I would have to kind of rescan the paragraph several times to see if there was a quotation mark that I had missed, if this was a direct quote from a letter or something, but there wasn't any of that. It was just kind of put in there. Now, I understand how this would be considered an artistic choice to make the narrative feel even more vivid, and I've seen books do this successfully before, but usually those books make the distinction between narrative shifts much more clear. They'll use italics and keep that shift sequestered to its own paragraph, for instance. How it's done here, I think it's messy, it hurts comprehension, and I'm just not a fan of it. So there are definitely things that prevent me from elevating this book to true greatness, but I still like it more than I dislike it. The emotions that this book evokes are worthy of its marketing as a nonfiction tragedy, for The Trail of Tears was exactly that, a tragedy and a travesty on top of that. If you can get past the gripes that I have with it personally, and maybe you can, you'll probably find this both edifying, and emotional. And that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, more reviews are to come. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on Music Hub.